The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
With Conrad Hussey dismissed from the Florida State football team, how will the depth chart evolve?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles.
Football season is about here. In a week and a half, we got Farmageddon, Iowa State and Kansas State overseas. Florida State is in the middle of their football camp, and we've gotten through two scrimmages. But the news after the second scrimmage wasn't what you necessarily would want. Conrad Hussey has been dismissed. That was denoted by Mike Norvell at his press conference, and didn't just leave. At least according to Norvell, that's his story. So nobody's heard from Hussey. I don't know what happened or didn't happen. Bottom line, he is no longer with the Florida State football team. Let's go back 2 years. He was a guy that had some impact as a freshman. Had some moments last year, but he was up and down, and towards the end of the season, didn't get it done. And, of course, the whole team was a little bit off, if you will, in a disastrous year. But there was still hope that the former St. Thomas Aquinas star could end up being a big-time player at Florida State University. Speed, length, the ability to play corner, nickel, or safety. He's got traits for any of those. It's a kid that I got to know and I saw play quite a few times. I don't think there's any doubt that he had plenty of options. Florida State was smart to go after him. But for whatever reason, Conrad Hussey has been dismissed. And I've been waiting to do this podcast to get more details, but Norvell that's the shortest answer I've ever seen him give. It was less than 10 words. Like, he wanted no part of the Hussey discussion, like none. I'm guessing it didn't end on good terms. Again, I have no idea what the details are, but it is unfortunate. So let's talk about the defense overall after we talk about the safety position. How does that change what Florida State's trying to do? Because remember, they don't use two, they use three safeties in this defense. So numbers at safety are very important to the Noles. With that being the case, for whatever it's worth, Florida State has had a bit of a quote-unquote change of the guard. Shyheim Brown, he did get mentioned today by Norvell, but he was a guy that was your leading tackler last year. He's not expected to start as it is right now. Maybe he ends up, Ashwin Barker, might be the main guy at that spot. Debatable. They're not super deep at the safety positions, though, because, again, they're running three. I'm going to ask a few questions about what you would do, but number one, who's your starter? You got to go with that first. Barker sounds like he's getting the most run. He's a redshirt junior. He's a former JUCO kid that has come on and taken the bull by the horns by all accounts. That's just one guy, though. You need to be minimum two deep at every spot. Is Shyheim Brown, is he starting to finally come on? I haven't heard enough to say yes to that. I don't know of anybody else that is ready. I mean, somebody like Max Feldman, or maybe they cross-train somebody like Quindarius Jones. I don't know, but Edwin Joseph is probably going to be a guy that could start if it's not Barker, because KJ Kirkland's probably a starter, and then Earl Little is the nickel. So you've got Edwin Joseph, you've got Ashwin Barker, Shyheim Brown, all in the mix at one spot, possibly. Depends on how you want to line them up, but Hussey's gone, so they need to figure it out quick, because you got to be able to rotate a lot of guys against Bama. And it's going to be 100-plus degrees on the field at Doak Campbell Stadium, because it's a 330, 335 kick or whatever it is, maybe 340, TV is with commercials. On August 30th, they've got a very difficult task ahead of them, and I don't think that it's going to be easy to get it done. You've got to be able to figure out who it is, but not overrun them with reps, because it's hot as bejesus down there, Tallahassee right now anyway. So the safety spot, here's my questions. Do they move anybody over from running back or receiver or corner to add depth, or are they good? And can they, number two, can they get everything they need done in fall camp without overrunning these guys with too many reps? I don't know the answer to that second one, and that's why I brought up the first question, bringing somebody over. I would try like crazy, and maybe a walk-on or somebody else figures it out, but numbers at safety are very, very important in Tony White's defense, as much, if not more, than just any other position on that side of the football. That's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask. So how would it impact the D? Well, if KJ Kirkland starts, this would be his first year being the guy. He's a redshirt sophomore, really highly touted player out of Jacksonville Reigns. That's good news. The other spot, sounds like Little is the guy, but now is Joseph definitely the other starter? I don't know. Is it Barker? We've heard about him possibly starting. And who would be the backup at which spots? Because I don't see three more guys that they're anxiously awaiting to put in those spots yet. So losing somebody that I thought could compete for playing time, if not start, to me is a little bit concerning. And it should be for all Florida State fans, because the depth chart, while it evolves throughout a fall camp, just flat losing a guy. I mean, it's one thing for a guy not to play well for a couple practices and he moves back on the depth chart. To flat lose a guy, that's pretty rough. So maybe Ricky Knight, maybe Charles Lester, somebody might move over. Maybe it's Kai Bates. He's big enough. He was over 200 pounds coming out of high school. But Florida State isn't in a perfect spot at safety. And let's be honest. Going into the spring, that was probably one of the deeper spots, but we thought Brown was going to be a key guy. He hasn't been yet. And we thought Hussey was going to be a pretty good player too. Now he's off the team. That's a big chunk of change you're losing there. It's unfortunate, especially with the opening game being the Alabama Crimson Tide, but that's college football. You got to buck up and figure it out. This is Florida State football. I'll be curious to see how they do the rotation and who starts where. Are they going to cross-train guys? There's so many possible questions about Florida State secondary, but this much I know. I trust Coach White and his scheme, and above all else, this is why I'm still good with the defense. And I was writing down some notes about this earlier, and this is number one on the board, why I thought like Florida State was going to be better this year. They got more talent, and they've got better coaches. I mentioned that the other day. Well, you could also add accountability. Top of the board now. Florida State, they got rid of Hussey for some reason. Again, Norvell used the word dismissed. That's not necessarily a mutual parting of the ways. So they're not going to take any fluff from anybody. And I think that's something this program probably needed last year, to be really honest, and probably should have dismissed a few guys, is my guess. But they kind of did that way in the offseason with a few guys that ended up transferring. Let your mind wander who I'm talking about. Some players that went to other prominent programs and needed a fresh start. Good for them if they do well. But Florida State needs to get back to being a team again, like that 23 unit. There were too many individuals last year. If you have problems, you got to get rid of guys before the season starts. You got to know who your rotation is. You got to know who your depth chart is. You got to know, as a player, who you can count on. So good for Florida State, and they should be able to figure this out a little bit easier than what I originally thought. So let's talk just briefly about who will surprise for Florida State at 2025 and why, as a team, I think they will surprise. This, to be honest, just gets added to the list because, again, if you don't have discipline, if you don't have a team bought in, it's over. Florida State getting rid of Hussey, if they truly needed to, good. Again, I don't know the reason, but I'm glad they did.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Officially official. Tennessee is going back to Adidas.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers.
It's not anything that's a surprise. It was never a who Tennessee was going to partner with for the apparel deal. If Tennessee was going to stay with Nike or go back to Adidas, it was just when. I mean, this is the worst kept secret in the world, right? Everybody's known that Tennessee's going back to Adidas for quite some time, but it became official yesterday when Tennessee made the announcement at 3:30. And this is not for this upcoming academic year, so Tennessee will still be with Nike for this football season, basketball season, baseball season. It will officially go into circulation, I believe, July the 1st. It's when that academic year kicks in for 2026. So the first time you'll see Tennessee players wearing the apparel of Adidas again will be next football season. Football, volleyball should be the first teams out there wearing the Adidas gear. So this is a big deal. First and foremost, I know fans have a lot of thoughts about this, and Nike's cool. The swish, I mean, that's all cool. Don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, if you're going to be a super fan, if you're going to be a big-time fan of Tennessee athletics or Tennessee football or college in general, because the landscape is so different nowadays, man, this should be a big deal for you. It really, really should be, in my opinion, because what Adidas provides vastly dominates, in my opinion, that of what Nike can provide right now. So, for instance, Adidas, part of its push right here is to prioritize college athletics, and that often opens doors for national branding campaigns that UT now in the current landscape can help facilitate. NIL opportunities for Tennessee athletes on a national scale. And Nike really just kind of does that with the professional routes, the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, but Adidas is prioritizing college. And so college athletes at Tennessee are now going to have, some of them, potentially some opportunities to have some national branding opportunities. It's a really, really cool deal, right? And, Tennessee, 10-year deal with Adidas. That's what they're going to, join into. The financials of it are undisclosed right now. We don't know how much money Tennessee's getting and all that, but Adidas is set to make Tennessee essentially the face of the franchise, right? I mean, I don't think that I've seen a quote saying that specifically, but Adidas is prioritizing Tennessee very, very much. And so for Tennessee to leave Nike, right? For Tennessee to move away from Nike, the financials had to be very, very important. The financials had to make sense. And obviously, we don't know those financials specifically, those numbers, but Tennessee made the move to Adidas for next year and for the next 10 years. And so it leads me to believe that the financials are where Tennessee wanted them to be. It's the era of revenue sharing, the era of NIL, and Adidas is giving Tennessee the best opportunity to compete in that landscape. So as a fan, in my opinion, you should be thrilled, right? Because this gives your program, your team, more opportunities to recruit star talented athletes to campus to play for your team, because they're going to have all these opportunities. So I think that's a big time deal. More on those financials. I know Nike paying Tennessee somewhere around like a base salary of $1.2 million each year for this year. I think they also had an allotment annual salary as well of around 4.5 maybe. I know that Tennessee also got an annual Nike Elite credit of around $100,000. I think the football team, basketball team, lady ball, I think they all kind of got one of those as well. Nike was negotiating, because it's the providing sponsor right now, the apparel partner for Tennessee. There was an exclusivity negotiating window where Nike could only talk to Tennessee about re-upping that deal, and that passed, I believe, at the end of March. And so since the end of there's national negotiating windows to where Adidas and some other companies can come in, and obviously it just kind of took off from there. So really excited to see kind of what this turns into. To my understanding, and I think I've read some places, Nike had the final say if Nike wanted to match or have a counter offer to what Adidas presented to Tennessee. And I don't believe Nike ever made a counter offer to that. So it was just, again, it was a matter of when this announcement was going to happen, not if, that Tennessee was going back to Adidas. So some really good stuff over at VolQuest.com. Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, Grant Ramey, myself, Rob Lewis, Matt Ray. I feel like, VolQuest.com, Brent specifically really knocked this out of the park, in terms of the breaking news of Tennessee going back to Adidas. Again, it's going to be a 10-year deal. The official apparel provider for the Vols and Lady Vols starting in the fall of 2026. A lot of comments specific to VolQuest. We'll read this real quick. This is This is the Chris McGuire. He's the VP of Sports Marketing for Adidas North America. This is what he had to say to VolQuest specifically. Quote, "We will continue to invest into NIL. We have an affiliate program where all student athletes can participate and essentially become an NIL athlete for Adidas." End quote. Again, just showing you yet again just another reason why this is so lucrative for prospective student athletes, for guys and gals Tennessee is recruiting on the high school realm. You come to Tennessee, you're going to have opportunities in the NIL world through Adidas, the essential apparel provider for the Vols and the Lady Vols. This is actually from the press release that was sent out by Adidas President John Miller, the president of Adidas North America. He had to say this, quote, this is from the press release. "Tennessee's creative team will remain the primary driver of uniform design throughout the partnership. Adidas will collaborate closely with Tennessee Creative, landing the brand's design expertise and innovative products to elevate the signature look of the Tennessee Volunteers." So what that means is Tennessee essentially has creative control. Tennessee's creative team will be working hand in hand with Adidas. So in no way, shape, or form will Tennessee athletes be bombarded or shocked with new uniform designs that weren't ever showed to Tennessee beforehand. It's Tennessee's creative team that's essentially leading that uniform design and working hand in hand with Adidas. So I know a lot of people got a lot of questions about that. Will Adidas have creative control? Will Tennessee have creative control? Pretty much Tennessee's going to be the lead in that area, but also working with Adidas in years to come. And of course, I'm excited to see what this means. Black jerseys for football, smoky grays, will that continue or not? Can we get some throwback uniforms? That would be awesome. That would be fantastic. What's baseball team going to look like, right? I'm really intrigued to kind of see what all this looks like in the coming months. Obviously, not going to happen in the next year. This is what Danny White had to say specifically to VolQuest when he did a sit-down with Brent Hubbs. Quote, Adidas, have been heavily involved in NIL space since its inception. They have an entire division focused on NIL. They have student athletes from all over the country, some of which compete for our teams right now, that are signed up with their NIL program. So there's a lot of reasons why we feel like they'd be the best partner for us as we march into the modern era of college sports. Again, that was Tennessee Athletics Director Danny White to Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com. So this is a big deal. And again, I know that everybody likes Nike and everybody thinks Nike's the standard, and that's awesome, right? I'm not here, downgrading or talking bad about the apparel Nike. I've got a lot of stuff of Nike in my closet, right? But in this era of college athletics, in this era of the NIL-driven revenue-sharing era of college sports, this is a great move because Adidas is trying to prioritize the college landscape, and not only prioritize the college landscape with national branding opportunities, but really putting a ton of emphasis in the University of Tennessee, and trying to essentially, again, make Tennessee, quote unquote, the face of the franchise. And I think that's a really big deal. Really big deal. Another quote here from McGuire, who's the VP of Adidas North America. He said, quote, "Tennessee will always be a priority for us. We are excited to welcome them back into the brand. We're excited about what the future holds. We will continue to invest into NIL," and goes on to that quote that I read earlier. So I think this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Again, this won't take effect until essentially, this time next year. Tennessee is still going to be with Nike through the 2025-2026 academic year. Tennessee was with Adidas from 1998 to 2014, I believe, and then been with Nike ever since. So had a long run with Adidas. Had some highs here lately with Nike, but going back to Adidas for the next apparel provider for the Vols and the Lady Vols. Now that it's official, though, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Tennessee going back to Adidas. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? We'd love to hear from you right here on Locked On Vols, and maybe I'll share some of the opinions and some of your responses on the show coming up tomorrow for a Friday Locked On Vols.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Game Time's Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Russell Westbrook as the assistant GM? Nah, Mick Cronin's got better plans, and this man may change UCLA recruiting for the near future. All for good.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins.
UCLA announced on social media today that they've hired Max Feldman as the team's AGM, assistant general manager. He's going to recruit, help with roster management. He comes from Made Hoops. UCLA has made an impactful hire. I know you believe that. I'm starting to believe it. A young man instead of Russell Westbrook. I thought that's where the Bruins are going. Why not that direction?
Well, when you talk about the profile of Max Feldman and other aspiring GMs kind of like him, these guys are pretty much prodigies, if you will, in terms of the roster management, scouting, and evaluation game. Feldman has worked at Made Hoops, where he was the director of scouting. Made Hoops runs national events from grades 6 through 12. Feldman had a direct hand in creating the recruiting profiles and databases of thousands of players that attended those events. So what this does, and what this just that, right, that gives him a grasp of, off the top of his head, the top prospects from the years of 2032 on down to 2026. I mean, this guy knowledge, this database management, this compiling data from tournaments. I talk about it like this because I actually worked in that industry for about 7 years. So I completely understand the nature of what he did and why this hire is such a good hire. So second, he's got a grasp of all the national talent in the country. If there's a 6'7" sick beast of a two-way eighth grader in Peoria, Illinois right now, yeah, our guy Max is gonna pull Mick's coat. He's gonna, hey, we need to be sending him a media guide ASAP. And the earlier you get in today's college basketball recruiting landscape, the earlier you get in, the better, right? You've built a relationship from a long time. He also worked for an EYBL organization called the Nike Mean Streets. The Mean Streets. They've had everyone from D Rose to Anthony Davis, all kinds of high-level, elite, Chicago-based hoopers. For him to be tied in to Chicago's elite of the elite program, and not saying we're going to get just a bunch of Chicago guards. We had a guard from Chicago years ago named Lazarick Jones. I'm not saying we're going to get a bunch of Chicago guards, but this guy has the relationships that are built in through years of blood, sweat, and tears and grinding that eventually earns him automatic respect when he picks up the phone. So if he wants to call somebody in Michigan, in Ohio, the whole Midwest, the AAU director, he's curious about a player, we want to come see him, Coach Cronin, Coach Savino, Max is your guy. Max is going to get it done. Max is going to set it up. Third thing, worked at Priority Sports and Entertainment as an intern. Now, when you're an intern in a sports agency of the magnitude of a Priority Sports, you are like the ultimate do everything do. You don't get paid probably anything. I don't know if it was a paid intern, but you pick up sort of this high level, doctorate level knowledge about the ins and outs of the sports management situation. So now you're dealing with players every single day. You're dealing with agents daily. You're probably a liaison for GMs. If there's a big pro workout, GMs are probably calling Max, NBA GMs calling Max, hey, where's the workout? Was this logistically Max setting things up? All of these things, when you throw them into a pot, and this is only 3 things I've talked about. When you throw them into a pot, it presents a well-rounded candidate that is currently involved in today's basketball high school recruiting landscape at such a high level. Made Hoops, ran by someone that I've known for years, Chad Babel. I knew him when he was at a group called Hoop Group, which is based in New York and New Jersey. And I kind of feel like this might have something to do a little bit with Darren Savino and his relationship with Babel that goes back decades. The other thing I'd like to say too, this idea of him working for On3, which Rivals eventually bought, and like I said, building out the profiles. He's a guy that just has a total command of the situation. I love this hire. I love Mick Cronin kind of stepping outside the box. I know everybody talk about Russell, and you see it around the nation, right? You see two types of hires currently being made in the GM space in college basketball in particular. I call it one bucket, you have a celebrity hire. And I hope I don't offend the celebrities that were actually hired. So
No,
Shaq,
offend them, Chris. Offend them.
so
Let's go.
You have celebrity hires. So Shaq's at Sacramento State. Damon Lillard's at Weber State, Terrence Mann at Florida State. You know, you have these guys, Trey Young's at Oklahoma. You have these guys now that have big cachet, big names, you know, top billing, that I think were hired more for the influential side of things. So if, you know, you got the real GM and the coaches doing all the work, then you can call Shaq and, hey, I need you to get on the phone with a recruit in the 11th hour. He's thinking about going to Kansas or whatever. And Shaq calls, oh, come to Shaq State. Come to Shaq State, you know. So now it's like a whole nother thing. Trey Young can do the same thing. Everybody that I named, Damian Lillard could probably bring some guys if he gets on the phone with him to Weber State. So you have that bucket of guy that's being hired, and then you have another bucket of guy. I like to call them the grinders, guys that really be out here in these streets. Adrian Wojnarowski at St. Bonaventure, Alex Klein over at Syracuse, and now Max Feldman at UCLA. Alex Klein is an example I love to use because I used to read Alex back in the day. I think he was like 16, 17 years old. He had a website called The Recruit Scoop, where he compiled a database of information nationally about players, and he was out in the streets. And then eventually got hired by the Knicks, and now Syracuse hired him as GM. But Max Feldman's trajectory is actually might be a little bit ahead of Alex at the same time. And Alex was considered like a prodigy type of guy in this particular space. I said it on Twitter. This is a specific like expertise unique to recruiting that not just everybody has, not everyone can just do. Max seems to be able to balance the data side of things with the relationship side of things and the personal side of things as far as player management and understanding how to deal with players.
The big thing is in today's day and age with the digital content and how you can connect so quickly with social media, the announcement videos, you can skyrocket so much quicker in that space when it comes to connects, blowing up with recruits. And with Max coming in, it's funny, Mick Cronin, what was it, just in March, Chris, that he said, I'm the GM. Now, he did float the idea, as we talked about Russell Westbrook being the assistant GM. Sure. That was never really a thing. I know he's kind of joking. He openly asked about it, but he was like, I am the GM. UCLA's already gone with the idea that the last big hire, I think, for recruiting they made was Ivo Simovic, and that was international recruiting, and then he left, and then that kind of didn't work as well after that. Right. So we bring in a youngster right now who could make things very interesting, and I'm going to ask you this question right now, Chris. What are your thoughts? Does this change UCLA's portal trajectory, and do they go with the youngsters? If you have the insight from 6th grade to 12th grade, shouldn't you just hammer home on the fabulous 5 freshmen, if you will, or whoever those best guys are, the Cooper Flags?
Sure.
Or does that mean they're still going to go portal like Cronin's thinking and how he's been the last couple of years?
You know, you can go that route, but UCLA hasn't been able to. Let me watch what I say. I mean, when is the last time that UCLA was able to consistently pull in number one recruiting classes? Steve Lavin era? Was there an era in the Mick Cronin or the Steve Alford or the Ben Howland era where we had number one? I don't know. I can't answer that.
I think they've gotten some very top tier recruits and they developed, but not an overall class. I'm pretty sure
top tier recruits. What? It's kind of like on the scenario where we were talking about recruiting and what's the recruiting strategy. You got to remember, everybody's going old in college basketball. So no matter who's hired who for GM, no matter who is in that staff, teams by and large across the board are looking for older, seasoned players to help them win a national championship. So I do not think that this hire necessarily changes the formula for Mick Cronin, if you will. I still think portal heavy, identify guys that you can get. Now with Max in the building, if we can get in on 5 stars, that obviously affects our formula, right? So if we're able to get in and there's some interest early and like, whoa, because of this relationship, then we might get one less guy we need to get in the portal because we have a 5-star that's going to take up that slot, or a high-level 4-star. I really don't know. I really don't want to speculate, but I do think that this guy, Max Feldman, is a value add for our recruiting for this reason. When the Compton Magic moved out of the picture as far as being sort of the pipeline, the Southern California pipeline for UCLA and the talent, things kind of got a little murky. I wrote about it earlier in the summer. I questioned what the pivot was going to be. What was Mick Cronin going to do now that the relationship with the Compton Magic was a little different? And you saw during their July, the UCLA basketball staff, when they went out and all the offers that went out, you saw they casted a wide net. They were going for a mix of national wings and guys like that, national talent, proven national talent. There were some East Coast guys, Anderson Diaz out of the New York Rens program, who went to Texas with Austin Goosley, Anthony Filazzi. I think he's over in Utah. I mean, so a couple of California guys. So that was sort of in July, kind of how, okay, the love affair with Compton Magic is dead. They left us. They're not happy with us. So what are we going to do? Boom. This is what we're going to do. We're going to throw out about 6 or 7 offers. We're going to get guys, start rebuilding pipelines, start rebuilding relationships. Savino's back on the phone, working the phones. Not saying he wasn't. I don't know what's happening, but it seems like with what we can see tangibly, what's in front of us, right? That's what happened. So now, from a recruiting perspective, you keep that same program, except now your relationships are going to be ironclad. Your ability to ID talent. That's what Max Feldman does at an early age, to be able to get in that this guy's a Cronin culture guy. We need to start talking to him right now. We need to send him the doggone media guide and whatever materials, t-shirts, hats, whatever it is, as an 8th grader. Okay, so that we can make contact and we can get in. We didn't have that before, other than the national list. Hiring Max Feldman, and this is the last thing, I'll cap this. Hiring Max Feldman is like hiring a actual scouting service, a one-man scouting service to help you identify talent and build roster.